A working mom with a worrisome diagnosis.
A malformation of the blood vessels in your brain.
A college student struck at school.
My head started pounding and I couldn't really see.
Both dealing with a rare condition.
It's an arteriovenous malformation, otherwise known as an AVM.
For Leanne, it meant building back her life.
She couldn't walk. She couldn't talk.
For Vanessa, it meant living with risk.
Death, paralysis, memory loss, stroke.
Or taking a bold step.
The decision became mine.
The choice of her life. Next on Chronicle.
We had the perfect life. Beautiful home, beautiful family, healthy children, successful careers.
Vanessa Garza had it all until
Every time I picked up the baby or bent over to put a baby in a car seat, I was hearing some strange sounds in my ears that just weren't right. And so that's when I realized it's time to see a doctor.
In addition to the sounds, she had hearing loss. Her doctor could not identify the cause, so an MRI was ordered.
So we went for the MRI. I got an email, actually. The email said, the MRI has identified a malformation of the blood vessels in your brain. This is a bit out of my scope, so let's have you talk to your primary care doctor and then come up with a plan. And by the time I Googled, I had already heard from my primary care physician to stay off the internet. This could potentially be something quite serious. I was a completely healthy, working professional mom, and now I was facing something that required me to see the head of neurosurgery at the top Boston hospital. I could not wrap my head around what they were telling me. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to die? I could not comprehend that.
September 2007. Leanne Palladino was thriving as a freshman at Elms College.
I loved it. I loved it. I was just getting into the swing of things. I wanted to be a speech therapist. I just wanted to help people.
Just 1 month into the semester, Leanne's mother, Susan, answered a frantic call from her daughter.
She was crying hysterically, and she kept saying, I can't. And I'm like, you can't what? She just kept saying, I can't. I kept asking her, questions, and then she hung up on me.
At that point, my head started pounding, and I couldn't really see. It was like going in and out of black.
I said, I'm gonna hang up, I'm gonna call the school, I think you need help.
Leanne was rushed to a local hospital.
They immediately had a surgeon come out and talk to me and tell me that she had some type of bleed in her brain. As we're talking, we're wheeling her down to the operating room, and at some point they looked in her eyes and seen something and just said, we gotta go. I was just hoping she was gonna wake up.
Doctors quickly operated on 18-year-old Leanne to reduce the pressure on her brain. They thought she had experienced a small bleed, but days later at Children's Hospital, an MRI revealed the problem was much bigger. It was an arteriovenous malformation, otherwise known as an AVM. Vanessa Garza was also diagnosed with a brain AVM, but hers had not ruptured. More on her story later. AVMs are rare, occurring in less than 1% of the population. They can go undetected, never causing a problem, or can cause headaches, speech, or vision problems. Worst case scenario, they rupture, resulting in permanent paralysis, even death.
Leanne is a very typical case, and it's really why these problems are so scary.
Leanne needed another surgery, this time at Boston Children's Hospital with Dr. Edward Smith.
She ultimately was found to have this blood vessel malformation. The fancy name is an AVM, or arteriovenous malformation. It's a little tangle of blood vessels that people have from birth, and they never know they have it. This is a picture of her brain right here. If you look at this carefully, you can see a little lump right here that looks like a little apple with some funny blood vessels around it. It looks different from the rest of the tree. This is a big weak spot in a blood vessel, kind of like a balloon or a water balloon that's being swollen. There's blood going into it and a little tangle of blood vessels around it that ultimately lead to this hemorrhaging and bleeding. With Leanne, what happened is the blood vessel in this AVM got enough pressure behind it that it leaked. And she suffered a lot of bleeding in a very short time and went into a coma.
A stroke, a coma, another surgery. These were difficult words for the Palladino family.
They said she needed surgery, but that they really couldn't explain to me in detail. I looked it up and I said, oh my God, not too many people survive when it gets to the point where it was. So it was very frightening.
On the scans, Dr. Smith saw the risks of Leanne's surgery.
And you can see on this side of the brain there's a big white area, and that's where she had the bleeding and the stroke. And unfortunately, this is the part of the brain that was very involved in language and also with movement of the right side of the body.
A delicate surgery lasting more than 10 hours. Dr. Smith and his team worked to seal off and remove the AVM. Dr. Smith walked out of surgery with hopeful news. He successfully removed the AVM. Leanne would live, but would she be the same?
It's just an incredible story and so much risk, obviously, when you go into the brain. But doctors and surgeons at Children's Hospital now are able to do sort of a dry run of the surgery.
Yes, using x-rays and MRI results, they can take a 3D printer and make a mold of the brain with the AVM. And surgeons are actually able to practice removing the AVM from this mold. And I was actually able to hold one in my hand. It was incredible.
Incredible that they had that opportunity to practice, really. Vanessa was prescribed patience.
We watch it and we cross our fingers and hope that it doesn't rupture.
But could she live with the uncertainty?
Mickey and Mom. Dad, John. All right.
37-year-old Vanessa Garza, happily married, a mother of two, with a successful career. She was living her dream until she was diagnosed with an AVM.
What was your reaction and what was going through your mind?
I thought from time to time that I was dying. When I would, research, only the terrible stories come up. Death, paralysis, memory loss, stroke, brain bleeding, words that I couldn't even comprehend.
Scans showed Garza's AVM was quite large.
It was spread out, it was diffuse. And that can make the removal of the AVM more complicated. So the procedures might interfere with good parts of my brain. And due to the fact that I had never had a rupture or a seizure or even chronic headaches, the doctors at the Brigham and Mass General and Dartmouth said, you leave your AVM alone. There are multiple modalities to treat AVMs, one of them being medical management. We watch it and we cross our fingers and hope that it doesn't rupture.
Garza realized if she chose treatment, she was betting on her AVM rupturing, and that might not be the case. Brain surgery had its own risks. Doctors warned she could lose her sight, or worse. A gut-wrenching decision, gambling on her life. Vanessa rejected surgery. Would the odds be in her favor?
At first I was at peace, and it was actually a huge weight of relief off my shoulders. They said to leave it alone. I'm at the best hospitals in the nation. I'm gonna leave it alone. And done.
But living with an AVM was nerve-wracking.
The anxiety of this ticking time bomb and the emotional state that I was in was too much for me to bear.
Dr. Aman Patel is a neurosurgeon at Mass General.
Well, the first thing I do is try to convince them that they don't have a ticking time bomb. You know, say you make the diagnosis at the age of 40, you tell them, well, look, you went through your entire first 40 years and it hasn't caused any trouble. There's a reasonable expectation that you can go through the next 40 years without it causing any trouble. The only difference is now you know it's there, so that's part of the trouble.
Surgery is not the only option to treat an AVM.
Operating on an AVM is one treatment. Radiation with radiosurgery, Gamma knife is another option. And we have a third option in which we use glue from inside the blood vessels to close off AVMs. And what the gluing does is diminish the flow in the AVM, which makes the surgery safer.
But remember, Boston surgeons felt Vanessa's AVM was best left alone. She and her husband Ryan McAllister considered all options.
If you have a rupture where it's random event, random time, you have no control, you know, it's effectively a stroke. So you can have outcomes from loss of motor function to loss of sight, to loss of speed. I mean, so many things can go wrong with these things.
Vanessa decided she couldn't live with her AVM, so she sought one last opinion. She sent her scans to a surgeon out of state. He suggested a craniotomy with a one-time embolization. That's where glue is injected into the AVM to prepare it for surgery.
For my family, for my children, for our future, it was something I had to do. I couldn't sit back and let this AVM take hold of me. I wanted to be there for my children, so I thought, I have to do this.
It's like, you know, the pit and the pendulum, right? You've got this like thing hanging over your head, and people say, just try to live with it, ignore it. And it got to the point with her where she's like, I just can't live with this thing.
Garza booked her surgery and prepared to face the unknown.
Vanessa obviously did a lot of homework. She researched AVMs like crazy, and then she talked to a lot of doctors.
Well, she was afraid. She was afraid that something was going to happen when she was alone with her children or when she was driving a car. But she was very happy that all the doctors that she spoke with said, seek other opinions, see what's out there. So I think that was great advice for her.
Up next, a conversation no married couple wants to have.
The doctors at the Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix had a plan for Vanessa.
They felt that while yes, this was a complicated case, it wasn't a case that couldn't be treated. So that was eye-opening, that at that point the decision became mine. You know, when you rely on the physicians to give you medical advice, they're the experts, but because AVMs are so rare and unique, it was really up to me how I wanted to proceed.
Weeks later, Vanessa, her husband, and their 2 young children packed up and moved west for the month. The surgeon would be the center's president and CEO, Dr. Michael Lawton.
The way he described it was, the guy had done like 750 of these surgeries, and he seemed pretty darn confident. So I always felt pretty comfortable that she'd be able to do it. I just knew it was going to be a really rough road to get through it.
Is your family there? Did you say goodbye to your kids here?
Yes, my husband and I had those discussions that no one wants to have, the what-if discussions. But we had those discussions because we knew it was reality. You don't know how it goes on the operating room.
At 7 a.m., Vanessa Garza was wheeled into surgery.
You know, those few moments where you're not getting the updates from the doctors and you start thinking about what could go wrong, that was tough.
10 hours later, Dr. Lawton gave Ryan the news. It had gone well. And so did Vanessa's recovery. They returned home, but then...
We were reading stories to our kids at bedtime, and she kind of sat up and said something, and it just didn't fit. You know, then she started basically having a seizure. That was worse than the surgery from my standpoint.
Surgery had gone well for Leanne Palladino, but remember, she suffered a stroke beforehand. Her recuperation was no walk in the park. After spending 2 weeks at Children's Hospital, she was sent here to Spaulding Rehab.
It was very challenging. You're 18, you know, I just wanted to be with my friends, going out. And now I'm in the hospital trying to learn how to walk and talk and use my right side.
Her schedule was grueling. 4 hours a day working with physical, occupational, and speech therapists.
I couldn't speak at all. That was the worst part. I couldn't tell people how I was feeling.
Her concerned parents could only watch.
You don't know, is she gonna be able to walk again? What if she can't walk again? And, we're a 2-income family, and how are we gonna survive? How am I gonna care for her? How is she gonna take care of herself? I mean, she couldn't walk. She couldn't talk.
Leanne, a fighter, was determined to recover.
My family was awesome because I could say whatever I wanted, even if it came out wrong. And it was like a funny thing, you know what I mean? So it wasn't something to feel bad about. After a while, it came.
Walking came a bit easier.
It was a good 3 weeks before I even took my first step. That came very fast. My right arm and my hand are still limited, but that was the hardest part, to get even close to do anything.
And 2 months after surgery, Leanne went home, but her treatment was far from finished.
Therapy was every day for about 2.5, 3 years. It was hard. I was so tired. I just wanted to go home, but I kept going. After a while, and you see results and you see changes, and I just wanted to get better. I wanted to be as close as possible to my real normal self.
7 years later,
I go to the gym all the time. I can do really anything. Just like the fine motor skills, like tying new shoes. Cutting food is challenging. Writing is hard, but I do it. I'm different than I was before. I'm a new different. I'm a person that, that came through a lot, and, I think I'm there.
4 months after her surgery, Vanessa Garza was home and feeling better than she had in months.
She has a wonderful outcome from surgery. She's doing great. Then you find her on the floor.
That was pretty scary because, she went purple, wasn't breathing for, I felt like, forever.
I had stopped breathing, and he thought I died.
That's scary.
Her husband Ryan called 911, and Vanessa Garza was rushed to the hospital.
We knew that seizures could be a possibility as the brain heals. There's scar tissue in the brain, that seizures are common. But it had been so long, and I had been feeling so healthy and strong that we thought we were past it. The brain is reconnecting, and every now and again there can be an electrical misfire, and this is what could happen. And so now I will be on anti-seizure medication probably for lifelong. There's a driving restriction. I can't drive for 6 months now, assuming that no more seizures occur.
Any deficits as a result of surgery?
So I do have a small visual field cut, as was anticipated. So it's up in the left quadrant, up here where my hands are. I can't see my fingers moving. And so I can see my hands up to here, and then it just goes invisible, and then it comes back. So I call it my invisible force field. Kind of like Wonder Woman or Superwoman or something.
Even though Vanessa Garza has been through 2 years of hell, she knows just how lucky she is.
Oh, my life has changed so much. I was a working mom, a crazy mom, running in and out, putting on mascara in the car. And now I'm here. I am present. I am living every day. And I'm so thankful.
And Vanessa says she feels so blessed. And it's also important to point out that AVMs are rare and occur in less than 1% of the population. So according to the doctors we spoke to, there is no need to panic and to go out and schedule an MRI.
It's a remarkable, remarkable story. Nicely done. It really was well told.